only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this webinar. I'm Andy Tusher from Make UK, and our presenters for this webinar are Chris Ford from Vauban.
Good morning.
And Catherine Brown from Howden.
Good morning, everyone.
Just to warn you, and apologies for this, we're having a couple of IT problems with Catherine, so she may drop out, and if she does, please bear with us, but we'll try our best to make it run as smoothly as possible. Sally Netherwood is also joining us from our marketing department to help moderate.
Good morning.
The purpose of today's session is to provide you with an introduction to cybersecurity in the manufacturing sector, covering the fundamentals of cybersecurity risk management, and offer advice on how to practically translate this into your workplace. We'll also look at the scenario of how companies respond to breaches and what they would do in the event of a breach. Now for some housekeeping. You've all joined this webinar with your audio muted. However, we're keen that you interact with us as much as possible, so please don't hesitate to send your questions in. You can do this through the chat box within the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end. We'll also be running a number of interactive voting questions for you to take part in, so when you see the voting questions on your screen, please simply select and submit your answer. Finally, the webinar has been recorded and will be sent to you afterwards, so don't worry if you miss anything. As the voice of manufacturing, Make UK is in a unique position to assist manufacturers in partnership with, Vauban. We conducted a survey to our members, and the findings were not surprising, although quite stark. 60% of our members have been attacked this year. Half of them suffered serious loss, and 41% have been asked to provide assurance as a supplier. This is up and down their supply chain, where people within the supply chain have asked that they have the appropriate measures in place to protect their businesses. And 35% have stated that it is inhibiting their development in their 4IR capability. Please have a look on the control panel, and under the handout section, you'll see that the briefing that we conducted in partnership with Vauban on cybersecurity and manufacturing. 4IR will deliver significant advantages in manufacturing capability, both in terms of efficiencies and productivity improvements. And unfortunately, manufacturing is an easy target for cyber attack. The threat is real and prevalent, and we have identified that this is an industry sector we aren't doing enough. However, our sector must not use cyber threat as an excuse for not embracing new technologies. At Make UK, we've been listening to our members, and as you know, we've been at the forefront of driving 4IR within our sector. This is crucial if we're going to continue to compete on a global stage, and we want to assist our members to embrace 4IR and help them manage their risks. This webinar will help you do exactly that, which is all about prevention and ensuring your businesses are appropriately prevented against any loss. Sally, over to you for our first polling question, please.
Thank you very much, Andy. So our first polling question is, has your business ever experienced a cyber attack? Please answer yes or no. I'll give you 30 seconds just to vote on that. Thank you very much to all those who have voted. So actually 50-50% split there. Andy, have you got any comments on that? Was that what you were expecting?
I was actually expecting slightly more within those that have actually had a cyber attack, and I think we'll hear as the webinar goes that certainly through Chris that you know, there are two types of businesses: those that know they've been attacked and those that don't know they've been attacked. So I think it's quite interesting that it came back 50-50.
Thanks, Andy. Chris, over to you.
Sorry, we're having a bit of a problem here with the technology. Main screen.
Go click back on your PowerPoint in the control panel at the bottom. So keep going left, that's it.
My apologies, everyone.
That's it, back up and running.
There's a large increase in the amount of criminal activity. So should we be concerned? And the answer definitely is yes. We're seeing a huge increase in the amount of threats and attacks across the globe, and that includes in the UK and in the manufacturing sector. Just by way of example, and going back to what we just discussed with the poll, in 2018, 48% of Make UK members reported they'd been attacked in the previous 12 months. In the survey we carried out this year, that figure has now gone up to 65%. So that's 65% of people saying they have been attacked. And Andy makes a very good point that quite often attacks can be long-term attacks where people are in your environment and have been in your environment for a long time, and you're not even aware that they're there. And that is an issue within the industry that happens. So there might be many people there who don't know they've been attacked or breached. Plus, also there is a trend where people are not willing to admit they've been, or to publicly admit they've been attacked. So obviously the data can be a little bit screwed. So what are we seeing? Most criminals, obviously their motive is theft and money, and that's not untrue of the cybersecurity threat. The majority of threats are done, most attacks are carried out in order to steal usually money, but obviously that also extends nowadays to the theft of data. Data now can be resold on the black market, and also for the theft of intellectual property. However, we are seeing and have seen over the last couple of years a large increase in what we call ransomware. So criminals are now realizing that actually, rather than stealing money from within a company's systems, it's as easy to inject some malware to cripple systems, usually through encryption, and then send a blackmail message and blackmail that company for the recovery of their systems in return for money. The problem with that ransomware is quite often that results in serious damage to the company's systems, and also loss of revenue from downtime while they try and recover their systems. So as well as perhaps losing money from the actual theft side of it, you're also losing money and from the lost downtime and damage to your systems. Industrial espionage is increasing as well. I've mentioned before data and IP. Increasingly now criminals are targeting your IP, so your intellectual property, or it may well be a process that you use that's critical to your system and gives you edge over your competitors. We have seen examples where companies have had their processes that they use stolen, and then suddenly another company in another part of the world is now delivering the same service or product as them, using their same unique competitive process, which has ruined the company's competitive edge. I'll also mention collateral damage. Increasingly, villains are using industrialized, indiscriminate methods to attack companies that don't have one end victim in mind in particular. So lots of people are getting breaches and attacks now when they weren't the intended victim. With increasing adoption of new technologies and capabilities, as Andrew mentioned, with the fourth industrial revolution, unfortunately, one of the side effects for that is that it gives an increasing opportunities for criminals to act. Another important trend to mention that is really vital is the human element. Depending on what research you read or see, say anywhere between 70% and 90% of attacks have occurred as a result of staff behaviour. This is usually where staff perhaps aren't trained properly, don't realise that they shouldn't be opening up a link, or they shouldn't respond to an email, or possibly recklessness or laziness. And there is a small amount of malicious behaviour as well, but it's a very important element to cybersecurity threat. Increasingly now as well, we're talking about supply chain. As we've mentioned with the fourth industrial revolution and increasing connectivity now, every business has a large amount of partners that they partner with as they deliver their service or their product. Unfortunately, that means you may well have got your own system sorted out, your own environment risk managed, but do you know whether your partners in your supply chain or your customers do as well? And unfortunately, that means they too can represent a risk to you. I wanted to just highlight a couple of case studies for you as examples. So everyone probably knows Maersk, a huge international global shipping company. They were victim of an attack in June 2017. They were the unintended victim of what's called a NotPetya ransomware attack. NotPetya was the malware that was used to attack their company. The key here, and the reason why I wanted to highlight this, is they were unintended victims. This was a very good example of a case of industrialized, indiscriminate attack. NotPetya was designed to cause damage, not to be just purely ransomware, and it was set loose, for want of a better word, across the globe to attack wherever it found an ability to attack. And unfortunately, Maersk became victim of that attack. You can see there from the statistics below that it cost them a huge amount of money to recover their systems. It cost them a huge amount of money in having to change and revert to manual systems and lost time. And the losses are something like $250 to $300 million of losses. I often hear from people, I'm just a small company, no one knows I even exist, no one's going to attack me. I think it's time to stop being naive. Cyber risk is not going away, and we do really need to grip it.
So the second case study to have a quick look at is the Norsk Hydro incident of March this year, which was another variant of ransomware, the Lokagoga, which is reported by the insurer AXA XL to be targeting the industrial and manufacturing industry. The malware is delivered by phishing, password guessing, and brute force attacks to gain administrator permissions to deliver the payload. Once in, it's working to lock you out of your systems. In this case, Norsk was forced to bring production to a halt for 160 plants over 40 different countries, and then put production into manual operation where required. As Chris quite rightly says, that type of interruption to operations is enormous. Norsk decided not to pay the ransom and decided to recover its operations through backup systems in place, which highlights the importance and safety of separate backups from the network and the testing of its quality. Much like the Maersk incident, research showed that this variant of ransomware can have a destructive objective with ransom as just a ruse. So if a company did feel pressured to pay, there is still no guarantee that your network would be returned. The financial impact reported by Norsk in the first quarter alone is estimated at $52 million. The incident response and business interruption elements will make up a majority of these costs. And whilst they had backup systems in place, the actual process of implementing or recovering it all takes time. With output reduced, sales fall. It was also reported that they even had to draft in retired employees to assist with the manual operations required in some areas. Senior staff's time and expertise is also diverted to deal with the incident at hand, all having an impact on their bottom line. Resilience is the key, and it's more than just preventing or responding to an attack. It's the ability to operate during and to adopt and recover from such an event.
So having painted a very gloomy picture, I think the message that I'd like to be able to get across to everyone, and I'm sure we all would have done, is do not panic. Many people I speak to regard cybersecurity as this complex, very expensive issue that only large companies can afford to deal with. This need not be true. I need to say to you, and I would urge you, that actually you can take relatively simple, methodical steps that are relatively inexpensive that will give you a good degree of cyber risk management and protection. I try not to use the word cybersecurity too much. We try to use the word cyber risk management, and that's deliberate because cyber risk is a corporate risk just the same as any other corporate risk that your company deals with every single day. It is really important that this is regarded as a board issue and that a member of the board takes ownership and coordinates activity across your company. I can't emphasize this enough. Most companies I've spoken to in the last 8 months have delegated the responsibility down to the IT department. That's indeed, if you have actually got an IT department in your company, most companies now have outsourced a lot of their IT provision, and usually it's a part-time role somewhere in the company to do with IT. Although IT is an important facet of cybersecurity, it is not everything, and it is important that this is seen as a more holistic company, cross-company situation and risk to be managed and coordinated. The starting point should be assessing where you are now. What is your stance? What are your vulnerabilities? What do you do now? Do engage an independent expert to have a view of your situation. It's always good to have someone else see the wood for the trees, and also it's important to have someone whose day job is cyber risk management and can give you that expert view. We've mentioned before the supply chain risk. It's important to also consider not just your own environment, but where your connectivity lies within your supply chain and partners. Please don't stick your head in the sand if you come across an issue and hope it will go away, because unfortunately things don't go away, and it is important to grip and front up issues. As we've mentioned before, the human angle is huge. And if I would, one of the most important tips I would give to companies is do engage in some form of cyber training for your staff. If you think that 60 or 70%, 80, 90% of vulnerabilities and attacks have been through staff training, that could be your biggest vulnerability and a single step that might give you the greatest impact. Do have incident plans in place. They are important. It's very important if you do get attacked to know what to do and how to deal with it quickly. Time is of essence. And obviously, do consider risk transfer to insurance projects to protect your bottom line.
So you make some really interesting points here, Chris. You can have the best cybersecurity on the planet, but if a cyber criminal wants to target you, they will go for the least secure elements in your supply network. By way of a recent example, 4 separate incidents over the past year have targeted Airbus, the aerospace manufacturer's supply network, to gain access to manufacturers' sensitive commercial data. This supply chain consisted of contractors, tech companies, and even Rolls-Royce. Commercial data and technology makes companies very appealing to other nation states, and it's believed that the Chinese were behind these incidents. This highlights the importance of ensuring cybersecurity up and down the supply network. I'd also like to touch upon the human angle. As Chris just said, a high percentage of cyber incidents and claims involve the human factor. So this area of security is of critical importance. We must shift the culture away from employees being your security weakest link to making them known as your strongest defense. Dispel the myth that people feel they should hide mistakes for fear of reprimand, but instead use these things as educational and training tools. User engagement directly impacts security culture, and cybersecurity needs to become habit. Many companies across all business sectors that we see on the insurance side engage their employees in an annual online training program to tick compliance boxes. But what are the results of this? What are we measuring, and what follow-up is done? Is it enough given the percentage of incidences recurring from the human factor? The basics are free. Ensure password security. Make sure that passwords are strong and not used across multiple accounts. Make sure employees lock screens and keep a clear desk policy. Physical security is just as important. No good just securing the network if someone can access your building and walk away with your server. Educate people to think about the risks of phishing and malware when clicking links or downloading software. Reaffirm that it's not just a business risk, but their personal life risk too. So then just briefly, having an incident response plan that has considered cyber could be the difference between an interruption for 24 hours or 24 weeks. Make sure the plan is offline. It's useless to you on a system that you are locked out of by ransomware. Know who your internal incident team is, who is in charge of what and where, and also include considerations for the following. Would a frequently asked questions document be helpful for staff? What will be your internal coordination in the event of an incident? Who do you need to inform, and how will you deal with client queries? Over to you, Sally, to launch the next poll.
Thank you, Catherine. So on that point, our next poll, which should launch on your screen now, is do you have continual staff training for cybersecurity? Please click either yes or no, and I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that. So thank you to all of those that have answered. So it looks like the majority of people don't have staff training in place, with 62%. Is that what you'd expect to see, Catherine, or Chris, have you got any comments on that?
I would say with the kind of annual training is becoming more popular. There's different ways of putting that training in force now that doesn't have to cost a lot of money. The National Cybersecurity Centre offer this kind of online annual training, which people should utilise more because it is a service that can raise awareness.
Yeah, I would agree with what you said there. Yeah, and there are a lot of people out there. It's a burgeoning industry with cybersecurity training now. There are a lot of providers out there, and I would recommend checking what their accreditations are. There are also a lot of cowboys out there as well. So it's the National Cybersecurity Centre do have some standards regarding training, and it'd be a good idea if you are considering provision is to have a provider that is accredited, because you could end up not having a quality product.
Thank you. So I'll hide that poll now, and if we continue through the presentation.
Okay, great. So why buy cyber insurance? So what we're going to look at now is the benefit of cyber insurance. For those of you that have insurance already and those considering cover, this might be a helpful high-level summary. Every business with technology has a cyber risk, and cyber risk is like any other business risk in the fact that it needs to be identified, assessed, and controlled. Cyber insurance is a great product. It provides practical expert support as well as a financial safety net in case of disaster. So we start with first-party losses, which are your own losses. The first 24 to 72 hours following a cyber incident is critical in confirming and containing, stopping any incident. With a cyber policy, you have critical access to an incident response panel at pre-agreed rates, with the insurer providing specialist IT forensics, legal assistance to ensure any regulatory notifications are made as necessary, and access to a PR agency to deal with crisis containment and minimize reputational damage. As you will be aware, GDPR creates additional legal responsibilities here to protect personal data, regardless of whether you store data in-house on your own servers or use the cloud or a hybrid model of these two. Businesses rely on people, technology, data, and reputation to operate every day. And although we are confident in managing our physical property threats, what about our non-physical threats, such as cyber? In the event of a system shutdown due to malware, ransomware, or operational error, this could have a direct impact on your clients' reputation and inevitably your financials. Cyber insurance policies include first-party cover for your loss of income and increased costs of working should your business suffer an interruption to get you back up and running as quickly as possible. But we would note, many people feel that their property business interruption policy would respond here. However, without physical property damage, the policy wouldn't trigger and therefore would provide no assistance. Social engineering then encompasses a wide range of malicious activity designed to exploit and deceive victims into giving out confidential information or funds from a business. If an employee makes a bank transfer of $10,000 to fraudsters after falling victim to a phishing email, supposedly from a senior director or supplier reporting to have changed bank details with an urgent request late on a Friday afternoon. Cyber insurance policies can include an inner limit for cover for these unfortunate situations, but it is vital to reiterate that internal accounting procedures must be robust and followed at all times, no matter who is making the request or what time of day it is, for your own financial protection. So someone has accidentally clicked on a link and your system and files have unexpectedly become locked, and the hackers won't return them unless you pay them the equivalent of £50,000 in Bitcoin. Alternatively, as they have gained access to your system and are trying to extort you, threatening to publish personally identifiable information, which could even just be your employees' payroll information or trade secrets unless you pay. What would you do? The considerations are endless. Would you feel confident in negotiating this? Would you have access to Bitcoin? Can you be certain that they have the key to unlock your files or have the information that they say they do? What are your backup capabilities? And so on and so on. A cyber insurance policy provides you access to specialist experts who also have access and knowledge of the dark web and a knowledge of hackers too, which may be instrumental in the outcome of this type of situation. We've discussed employees earlier, but would like to note again that the employees being a constant target of malicious emails and the advanced threat landscape we find ourselves in, it's very difficult to fend off every security threat. We then have the third-party liability side. You receive a notice of claim from a third party because your system has transmitted harmful malware to theirs. You receive a claim from a third party or class action for damages and distress resulting from a data breach. You may have seen in the newspaper this morning the class action that's been approved against British Airways. You receive a letter of claim from a third party or defamation or slander due to your website, marketing or other social media platforms. A cyber liability insurance policy will look to provide cover for your legal liability to third parties as a result of a cyber incident, not limited to damages and defence costs. So I appreciate the insurance isn't really a crowd-pleasing topic, so I'll finish off by saying that while cyber risk is a modern-day risk, let's also not forget to enjoy the benefits of what the internet and technology can bring and keep using them to fuel the growth of businesses. I recently heard someone say, it was dangerous to sail to other countries all those years ago. Insurance helped to spread that risk, giving ship owners the confidence to set sail. Let's keep that spirit in the cyber world, where yet again insurance is the safety net, allowing all of us to prosper. But let's also batten down the hatches prudently where we can.
So the aim of our service, our new service, is to address and manage the risks, cyber risks that are specific to manufacturers. We understand that manufacturing is different to other sectors. So for instance, in the manufacturing sector, there are a lot more examples in networks now of the use of IoT and operating technology as well as IT. We want to deliver a service that is specific to manufacturers' risks. Our solutions are bespoke, and by that I mean it's not an off-the-shelf service with a fixed price. What we try and do is we recognise that every single company has a completely different set of requirements, a completely different environment, a completely different set of risks, and as a result, we need to produce and deliver services and solutions that meet that particular environment and that particular requirement. We also recognise that no one has bottomless budgets, and that budgets can be a challenge. And we will work with you to flex and deliver a solution that meets not only your requirements in terms of the technical space and the policy space, but also perhaps your budgetary requirements as well. We're quite willing to deliver in a phased approach that meets that requirement too. We are developing now a suite of services and an expertise in the supply chain area, recognising that supply chain risk is a rapidly increasing emergency area. Make UK have a website, as you know, and on that website now is a cyber risk and cyber security page. We aim to increase the presence on that website and that page so that you visit it and use it as an area and a resource for you to use to gain trusted advice in the cyber security space. We will also be running a number of events over the next few months and years indeed around cybersecurity, and aim to learn more and more about what is specific to the manufacturing sector and be able to give out trusted advice to members around cybersecurity and their cyber risk management. Our services start with assessing your risk. You need to start your journey on the cybersecurity and cyber risk management process with understanding what your risk is today. With that in mind, we've developed a cybersecurity online assessment tool. This is accessible through the Make UK website or a link on that website, and it consists of a questionnaire that can be filled out by yourself as a self-assessment, which looks at the environment that you are in and what activities you already take towards cyber risk management. At the end of that assessment, you will get a good idea of what your strengths and weaknesses are, and it'll be displayed in a dashboard in a red, amber, green scenario, so you can see quite easily and visually what your strengths and weaknesses are, and can use that as a tool to begin to take action. At the same time as you carrying out your assessment, one of our experts will review the assessment results and will produce a summary report for you, which is a summary of the assessment results, and also will give an idea and some advice and an indication of the sorts of activity you should begin to take to manage your risks. Both these products, for want of a better word, those services, are completely free of charge for Make UK members. In addition to that, we can also deliver a one-day detailed debrief. This is where one of our experts will come in and visit you and meet with you and key stakeholders to further go through the assessment you've taken and further give advice and help you to build an action plan for future action. Our service also includes our vulnerability management services, suite of bespoke services to help you manage your risks day to day. These range from giving advice on how to write and how to compile and how to deal with processes and policies to deal with cyber security risk management, to advice and assistance to perhaps get you towards accreditation for one of the many standards out there for cybersecurity. The sorts of standards we would recommend are the British government's Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus standards, all the way up to the ISO's 27001 gold standard on information security management systems. We can help you get to those standards, help you get that accreditation. We also have a number of solutions and technologies around delivering cybersecurity management on a day-to-day basis and managed services. These range from cyber awareness training for your staff, to protective monitoring, to encryption and insider behavior monitoring. So we have a whole suite of solutions that we can give you advice on and help and deploy for you. And obviously, thirdly, you can also access Howden's expertise in the specialist insurance, cyber insurance market, specifically designed for the manufacturing sector. If you go to the control panel in the handout section, there is a handout there that further describes in more detail the services that are on offer through the Make UK Cybersecurity Service. Sally, I wonder if we could perhaps now move towards polling question number 3.
No problem, thanks Chris. So third and final polling question, how often does your business review your cyber provision? Regularly, sometimes never, or you might not know, so unsure. I'll give you a little bit of time to answer that. Thank you very much to those who have voted on that one. So the majority, Chris, are unsure, so it might be that it's not being communicated through the business correctly. With the other majority, 33% sometimes, so quite a low majority of people saying regularly. Is that what you were expecting to see?
And to be frank, yes. And of course, I don't know exactly who's logged on to the webinar today, but I have found that I would take a guess, I may be wrong, that a number of people who've logged on are perhaps from the IT world in their companies, and that reflects very much on what I was saying earlier about how it's a cross-company issue and a board issue. And I would hope that people would take action to start to do that.
Thank you. So I'll hide the poll now and we'll continue with the presentation. Okay, I think we have time for some questions. So thank you to all those people that have submitted questions throughout the webinar. I've collated some here. So first person's asked, how long does the online cybersecurity assessment actually take to complete? This is probably one for you, Chris.
Yeah, so the self-assessment questionnaire is in two sets. There's what we call a basic question set, which is for people who don't have much experience of cyber risk management, that's obviously in plain English and simple, and only takes about 40 minutes to complete. And then the more advanced question set, which is aimed at people who've perhaps already done a certain amount of cyber risk management and have some maturity in that area, and that's aligned more with the ISO 27001 standard, and that can take up to 2 or 3 hours to complete because it's a much more comprehensive set of questions. I would add that we've done our best to make sure that this is in plain English, and people who from a non-IT background and non-cyber risk management background can understand the questions.
Thanks, Chris. Next question, who in my company should actually lead on cybersecurity?
Again, as I've said throughout this webinar, it is really key that someone at board level takes ownership of cybersecurity. Usually the person in the company who deals with risk management throughout the company. I'm increasingly finding that's the chief operating officer or the financial director or possibly the managing director. But it does need to be someone who has that ability to coordinate activity across the whole company.
Thanks, Chris. Catherine, have you got any thoughts on that from an insurance point of view? Who would you normally deal with in companies?
I mean, from an insurance point of view, what we're seeing is what we're trying to actively coordinate is kind of a combined approach. We want to make it kind of an enterprise risk. So, you know, there is board level engagement, but, you know, it's the chief information security officers or the chief information officer or, you know, the IT director. There has to be communication across the business for everybody to understand the different elements that all bring it together. So whilst Chris is right, you know, the decision maker is usually board level. It is something that we like to actively see kind of filter down and throughout the business.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another question here. I realise that cybersecurity is important, but we don't have big budgets in my company. How are we supposed to be able to afford this?
I have real sympathy with that question. Lots of companies I've spoken to have been very small companies, and indeed many people in many members of Make UK are SMEs, very, very small companies, and I can understand how it can be quite daunting. So I'll repeat the message that that both Catherine and I said over this webinar. There are simple, inexpensive steps you can take that will increase your cyber defense. So just having a thought and saying, right, we haven't got a formal process in this company and no one at board level considers and overviews the risk, that's free of charge for you to make that decision as a company. Yeah, there are simple steps you can take. Plus also, we're willing to work with you to help you look at your risk and what your action plan should be. And it may well be that after your assessment, your action plan has a long list of 20, 25 actions you need to take. But we'll also help you with prioritizing those actions. We'll also help you say, look, actions 1, 7, and 8 are really important. You need to do those first. And so you can have a phased approach to your deployment of risk management processes, so you can manage your budget. So my plea is to say, yes, if you haven't got large budget, don't stick your head in the sand and ignore it. You can take some actions and build upon your platform and your foundations.
Thanks, Chris. I think we've probably got time for one last question. So quite a broad question here. What are the top 3 steps I should take? So that's probably open to you, Chris and Catherine.
Catherine, do you want to go first?
The top three that we would like to see is just generally just doing the initial assessment of what you've got, knowing what you have to protect in your business. Will help massively in then deciding kind of your next steps from there. We would like to see the as we've spoken about with employee engagement, you know, some of the basics there are free, making sure that password security and those types of things, multi-factor authentication, you know, those things can instantly provide you with better protection. And my third will always be make sure you've got a cyber insurance policy.
And I would I would mirror those, and if I'm allowed a fourth, it would be regularly review what you're doing, regularly at the board level or at whatever level. Say, how are we doing, what we're doing. Yeah, you'd be surprised the amount of new IT, new software, new development, new processes you adopt as the year goes on, and you need to make sure that actually you've managed those risks and you've built them into your overall plan.
Thanks both. So unfortunately, I think that's all we've got time for today. So I'll pass it back over to Andy, who'll just round off today's session.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sally. And again, thank you, Chris and Catherine, for their time, and thank you for joining us on the webinar. If there are any questions we didn't get around to answering, we'll get into contact with you after this webinar. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you again for attending, and have a good day.